Ah, beer. It's one of the oldest, most beloved drinks on the planet. But let's be honest, it has one tiny little flaw. It's just not that strong. So what if you could change that? What if you could push beer to its absolute theoretical limit? Well, today we're diving into an experiment that did just that.
So that's the big question, right? What is the absolute limit for beer? I mean, is there a ceiling? Could you get it to 75%, maybe 85%? Or, and this sounds crazy, could you somehow make a 100% beer? That's the question that started this whole wild journey.
Now, before you go breaking records, you've got to know what you're up against. And it turns out the bar is set pretty darn high. The strongest beer you can actually go out and buy clocks in at a wild 67.5% alcohol. That is the number to beat. To even dream of shattering that record, you need a whole new game plan. So, instead of using old school methods, the idea was to use a pretty cool scientific technique called freeze drying. And the goal? Oh, it was ambitious. Cram 20 entire beers into a single can.
On paper, the math seems to check out, right? You take 20 regular 5% beers, you figure out a way to get rid of all the water, and what you're left with should be the alcohol equivalent of one pure 100% ABV beer. A bold idea for sure, but hey, the logic feels sound.
So here's how freeze drying is supposed to work. First, you pour all that beer into trays and freeze it solid. Then you stick it inside a vacuum chamber. And this is the magic part. The vacuum lowers the pressure so much that the frozen water doesn't melt. It just turns straight into a gas. It's a process called sublimation. The whole plan hinged on sublimating away only the water, leaving behind all the flavor and, of course, all that precious alcohol. But, science is rarely that simple. The experiment was about to hit a massive, unexpected wall, a problem so fundamental it would change the entire project. And here it is, the fatal flaw. It turns out the vacuum didn't just get rid of the water, it took all the alcohol with it. Why? Because alcohol actually has a lower boiling point than water, so under that vacuum, it just vanished even faster. In the biggest twist of irony, the process that was supposed to make the world's strongest beer was actually making a totally alcohol-free product.
So what was left after this epic failure? This, a really fine, fluffy powder. And yeah, it had zero alcohol, but it also had the most intense, concentrated beer flavor you could possibly imagine. It was pure beer essence, just definitely not a SuperBeer.
Okay, so plan A was bust. Time for plan B. If you have the pure flavor of 20 beers, why not just add the alcohol back in? The next logical move seemed to be taking all that powder and mixing it with pure 100% food-grade ethanol.
And another fail.
It turns out the powder from 20 beers takes up a ton of space and acts just like a sponge. It soaked up all the ethanol and just turned into this thick, gross, undrinkable sludge. There was just no way to get all of that stuff to fit back into one can. At this point, it was pretty clear the original goal just wasn't going to happen. It was time to go back to the drawing board, rethink the entire objective. This is what we call the scientific pivot. The new plan was way more focused. Forget about concentrating 20 beers. The new mission was this. Take the flavor powder from just one beer and see just how much alcohol you could possibly dissolve into it to make one single, super potent, and actually drinkable liquid. But this new goal came with its own set of incredibly frustrating little puzzles. For starters, the powder wouldn't dissolve in pure ethanol. It needed a little bit of water to work, but every single drop of water you add lowers the final alcohol percentage. And get this, even the order you mix things mattered. Add the ethanol first, and you get this weird insoluble goo, but add it second, and all the flavor solids would just crash out of the solution. It was a super delicate balancing act. And in the process of trying to figure all this out, they actually created this stuff, a strange, totally flavorless gum-like substance that formed whenever the ratio was off. It was a true, chewy, scientific mystery. But after tons of painstaking trial and error, adding a little water here, a little ethanol there, adjusting it again and again, they finally found the sweet spot, a perfect ratio that kept all the flavor dissolved and packed in as much alcohol as possible. They had finally cracked the code. So, what was the final result? An absolutely stunning 80% alcohol by volume, a number that didn't just break the world record, it completely demolished it. Let's just stop and appreciate what that number really means. Compared to your standard 5% beer, it's just on another planet, and it blows right past that previous record of 67.5%. This wasn't just a small step forward, it was a giant, world record-shattering leap. So what does that actually mean? Well, they created a drink that had all the flavor of a single beer, but it packed the alcoholic punch of 16 of them. This was the true SuperBeer. But of course, the real question is, how did it taste? You'd think it would be basically undrinkable, right? But the creator's reaction was one of pure shock. He actually said it was crazy good, even better than some regular beers, with a burn that was surprisingly not that bad. But to be fair, a friend who also gave it a try had a slightly different experience. For him, that ethanol burn was way more intense, right up front. He said it burned the moment he took the shot, though he did admit there was a definite beer aftertaste. It just goes to show you, the experience is every bit as intense as the drink itself. So this all leads us to one last fascinating question. After all that struggle, all that science, is this thing they made, even technically or legally, a beer? And the official answer is no. The government looks at something this strong and classifies it as a liquor, plain and simple. But for the creator, the spirit of the project is what matters. It started as beer. It tastes like beer. So to him, it's beer. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. What really makes a drink what it is? Is it the process, the ingredients, or is it just that final number on the label?